Of the twins, Madeline happens to be the more strong-willed. The one with the big ideas and bigger dreams. She's a genius, as we know, so it makes sense that she's ambitious too. Being a woman in the 70s who lost her parents early and had to take care of herself and her brother made her a force to be reckoned with. Madeline tells Verna on New Year's Eve that she will be satisfied when she learns to be immortal. They kiss when the ball drops, and somehow, Madeline feels a connection with Verna. Now that 3 of the kids are dead and the informant still hasn't been found, the 3 remaining siblings are worried, but more importantly, Madeline thinks Verna and Roderick may have had a kid, and that kid is now trying to come for the others to become the sole inheritor. She hires bodyguards for the remaining kids, who follow them everywhere. Vic is the only illegitimate child remaining, and that's a little bit frightening for her. She's feeling her morale shake a little. On the other hand, Frederick has taken Morel back home to get her treated there, but he's more interested in figuring out what she was doing at Perry's party. Victorine tries to convince Al that the patient she's found is the perfect candidate for the heart mesh. Al is completely against using the heart mesh on a human being because the chimpanzee died. Al doesn't know Victorine's secrets, but she's completely against this unethical practice. Al finally has a meltdown and tells Vic that it's true that none of the ushers are good people. Al decides to leave Vic, and in a rage, Vic throws something at the door before she goes. At the hospital, Madeline visits Vic and has a similar conversation with her as her dad did, wondering if she's the informant. Vic gets more paranoid as time passes because all she wants is for her heart mesh to work on a human. At this point in The Fall of the House of Usher, episode 5, we see Augie have a conversation with the judge and Pym. He suggests that it's really strange how the ushers never get convicted for any of their crimes, even though the bodies and paperwork keep piling up. He's worked really hard to try to catch them over the years, but it's almost a supernatural force that protects him. In the old house in 2023, Roderick finally asks Augie who the informant was, and he replies that there never was one. It was a tactic he wanted to apply to get the kids to talk, to stir the pot, and to make one of them fall under pressure and break. It never worked, though. In 1979, Madeline met Rufus with the offer of her new algorithm that would help track drug movement for Fortunato. Rufus is quick to understand exactly what this means. All the forged documents from Fortunato would be digitized for the police. He insults Madeline by making promiscuous advances at her, but she's able to face him with pride. At this point, everyone in the office knows that Roderick and Madeline are Longfellow's children. Rufus tells Madeline to stay in her lane and stand by his side if she wants anything to do with Fortunato. She tells Augie and Roderick about what happened, making sure Augie knows that they're on his side. Victorine begins to hear a strange chirping sound when she's at the hospital. She's talking to Verna about the operation and how Al will be the doctor to do it. Verna is uncertain about the situation, though, and just wants to hear from Al that this is safe for her. She compares the feeling to the intuition horses have about their rider, sensing their nervousness, implying that she knows something is going on with Vic. Tamerlane, in the middle of this whole mess, is still trying to launch her new product. Bill tells her to take it slow and get some sleep because he's worried she hasn't slept for days. Tamerlane has a huge argument with Bill because she couldn't care less for sleep. She insults and disrespects him by talking about how he was just a pea in the pod who was methodically chosen for Tamerlane's vision. He was never special, he just had the best viewership as a live fitness expert. Bill is the name that markets Tamerlane's product, but she's the one who has done all the work for it. She says she's seen Verna in multiple videos with Bill, making it seem as if Bill and she have been seeing each other outside of the little arrangement at home. Bill argues that it was never his idea to get other women into their lives, it was all Tamerlane. She's clearly imagining things because of the lack of sleep, but Bill is too hurt by her calling him an asset and decides to leave. Now, in the fall of the House of Usher, Roderick has lost 3 of his children, and he's tired of losing his mind. He spends more time in that basement, and he's also hearing bell sounds coming from the other side. Roderick thinks about taking too many Ligadone pills, then jumping off his building, and other ways of offing himself, but to no avail. He's a coward, after all. He visits Victorine, apologizing for putting too much pressure on her. In truth, he was just worried about himself, so he took it all out on her. Vic kept on some loud music because she could still hear that strange sound that other people were unable to hear. Now, when she turns off the music, Roderick can hear it too. It's a strange, unknown sound, and Vic tries to go into the room to check up on Al. In the conversation Vic had with Al, just before she left, we know she threw something hard at the door. It happened to have hit Al in the head, basically killing her. Vic had forgotten that had happened, and now she remembers. She tells Roderick to come to see what she's done because it's a big achievement. She sees a scalpel in her hand, meaning she's done something unimaginable. There's a stench in the room when Roderick makes it there, and to his utter shock, Al sits on a bench, completely bloodied, with the heart device punctured into her chest. That's where the sound is coming from because Vic never closed her up. At the same time, Vic is having delusions and thinks she's talking to Al, who is alive in her mind. She's taken over by the guilt of lying to everybody, not only about the chimpanzees but about Al as well. Roderick tries to talk Vic into stepping out of the room to relax a little bit. He tells her that Al looks quite dead, but she doesn't believe him. Vic tells Roderick that she'll fix everything. She moves from consciousness to delusions, finally putting a knife at her dad's throat. At the end of The Fall of the House of Usher episode 5, Vic reminds Roderick that success is everything and she will go to any lengths to achieve it. For a moment, Vic's tone changes. She tells Roderick that it would have been better if he had jumped, but because he didn't, Vic now plunges the knife into her chest in front of her devastated father. Victorine's death was ruthless, with Roderick witnessing the whole thing. We know Tamerlane hasn't been sleeping at all, thanks to her fear that the Goldbug launch might flop. Because of this, she starts to lose time while working on the launch. She doesn't realize when she's crossed out the whole speech just to write her own name in capital letters. She's leaving things in weird places and doesn't know when she's had her coffee. Finally, she decides she really needs to take a nap, so she takes some pills to help her even after having no sleep for many days. In the present day, Augie has a tough time understanding how Roderick knows about all of the kids' deaths in detail when he doesn't witness them. Roderick tells Augie that his kids told him what happened, making Augie more confused. After Victorine's death, Roderick returns to his office because it's a PR mess if anyone figures out he was right in front of Victorine when she pushed a knife into her chest. Madeline is still stuck on the Verna and thinks she got to Victorine even with the bodyguard in place. Roderick reminds her that he witnessed her death. Madeline reminds Roderick that Victorine had a seat at the table, that is, as a shareholder. This gives Roderick something else to focus on again, sublimation, remember? Juno is all alone in the gigantic house and feels lonely. She tries to call her husband, but he doesn't respond. On TV, she sees the news of Victorine and Al's deaths, making her more worried. She's also taking a high dose of Ligadone, which she wants to stop doing because she feels fine now. Juno met Roderick as a patient who needed saving. She was in so much pain from an accident that only Ligadone could have saved her. At this time, everyone seems to be out of control. Frederick promises Lenore that specialists are on their way to help her mother, but somehow, they don't show up. Roderick sees all his dead kids more often than not, and Tamerlane has an imaginary conversation with Bill. At home, Juno gets a visit from Tamerlane, who has always hated her. After all, she's a stepmother much younger than Tamerlane herself. Juno tells Tamerlane that she married Roderick because she wanted to be a part of something big, she wanted to feel like she belonged. On the outside, the whole family looks like an unbreakable wall, but she's at her loneliest because no one even visits her in the large, empty house with too many rooms and no people. In the old house, during his confession, Roderick tells Augie that there is almost nothing Pym can't do. He's capable of doing anything for the Ushers because, when he was in his 20s, he went on an expedition across the world. Amongst telling Roderick's kids interesting stories such as the Earth is hollow, Pym told them that when he got to the North Pole, he found a place he called Ultham Thule. This is where the beings that are not in our time and space exist. A different dimension, if you will, but on his journey, Pym saw the worst things he could, people eating each other and worse. Augie needs some papers copied for the trial and asks Roderick to bring as many as possible. Annabelle thinks it's a dangerous task, and she's starting to have second thoughts about Roderick's work with Augie. After Victorine's death, Pym is tasked by Madeline with tracking down Verna. He finds strange images of her with the most influential families dating back to 1901. It's impossible because she hasn't aged a day in the pictures. There's a conversation Madeline remembers, but Roderick refuses to acknowledge it. He, too, remembers Verna clearly, but he's unwilling to admit that she has anything to do with the deaths of his children, even if the evidence proves otherwise. Lenore is thrilled to notice that her mother is getting better and is even able to talk to her. She tells her father immediately but wonders where the doctors he promised are. Whenever she's at home, nobody is around to help her mother. Frederick tells Lenore not to worry because he'll take care of it all. On the other hand, he's been giving Morel a paralytic, keeping her unconscious for hours because she lied to him, and he also thinks she was having an affair with Perry. It's time for the launch of Tamerlane's project, and she's more nervous than ever. Her father, on the other hand, is stuck in the basement talking to a brick wall, hearing the sound of bells on the other side. Madeline reminds him that 2 of his children are still alive and very much need him. He's supposed to show his support for his daughter. The important thing is Fortunato and whatever is left of the family. Madeline gives Tamerlane a pep talk, too, before leaving her alone with her thoughts. As soon as she has to go on stage, Tamerlane sees Verna in her place. She somehow manages to save face by directing her not-so-professional words to the audience as a joke in her speech. Soon, she sees Verna in the audience, too. She gets more frustrated by the minute, making her fumble her speech and also distracted from Goldbug. This is the thing she's lost so much sleep on. She's been working hard for months for this launch, and now she's goofing it up because of this one woman. An imposter. Tamerlane sees Verna in the images that are supposed to be of her and Bill. Pictures of Tamerlane in Forbes magazine now have Verna's face plastered on them. Ultimately, a video of Bill and Verna in the bedroom listening to Tamerlane's instructions comes on the screen. She screams for it to be turned off and furiously picks up the mic stand when the video doesn't stop. She breaks all the screens on the stage, and then, when she can't bear the sight of Verna in the audience, she lashes out by throwing the mic stand at her, which hits Juno right in the head. At the same time, Madeline sees Verna too and tries to walk towards her, grabbing at her, but she disappears into thin air. Just like her sisters, Tamerlane is also afraid of being replaced. Tamerlane's strange desire turned into her biggest fear. The big speech she gave her husband about being an asset has clearly scarred her. Tamerlane rushes home and sees Verna there as herself. Verna picks up the phone, telling Bill that she doesn't know why the launch was such a mess. Tamerlane picks up the fireplace poker and swings it at Verna, who disappears. Every time she sees a mirror, Tamerlane takes a swing because she sees Verna on the other side. It seems Tamerlane was a twin, but she absorbed her twin in the womb. Verna pretends to be that twin who has come back to get her with her tendrils. Tamerlane has broken through all the pressure of the Usher name. That's why she's always seen her siblings as competition. At the end of episode 6 of The Fall of the House of Usher, Tamerlane gives in and admits she's messed up everything. She finally gives up, ready to be taken by Verna. Verna offers Tamerlane some sleep, and as she looks up at the mirror on top of the bed, she sees Verna again. Tamerlane jumps up, smashing the giant mirror and falling on a shard. Finally, a huge piece lodges itself in her neck. How did the bodyguard not hear the noise from all the mirrors smashing? It's weird, but this means only Frederick remains. Thank you for joining us on this journey. And I hope you enjoyed the episodes of The Fall of the House of Usher.